Kindness is a beautiful trait. It reflects empathy, compassion, and the willingness to support others. However, there's a point where kindness can begin to erode one's self-respect, especially when it's given unconditionally and without limits. Many people fall into the trap of being overly kind in an attempt to gain approval, avoid conflict, or maintain harmony. While these intentions may seem noble on the surface, consistently putting others' needs above your own can lead to emotional exhaustion, resentment, and a loss of personal identity. When you're always the one saying yes, always accommodating others, and always trying to be the nice person in every situation, you start to compromise your own values and priorities. You may find yourself agreeing to things you don't want to do, tolerating disrespect, or suppressing your true thoughts and feelings just to keep the peace. Over time, this pattern can cause deep internal conflict. You begin to feel invisible in your own life, like your needs and boundaries don't matter. And worst of all, people may begin to expect this behavior from you, not appreciate it. Being kind should never mean allowing others to mistreat or manipulate. True kindness involves respect, not only for others, but for yourself. If you find yourself giving and giving without receiving any appreciation or reciprocity, it's a sign that your kindness is being taken for granted. In such cases, continuing to be overly generous or agreeable doesn't help anyone. It enables bad behavior, reinforces unhealthy dynamics, and prevents growth, both for you and the other person. Self-respect means recognizing your worth and honoring your own limits. It means saying no when something doesn't feel right, even if it disappoints someone else. It means speaking up when you're being treated unfairly, even if it causes discomfort. You can be a kind person and still demand to be treated with dignity. In fact, people who have strong boundaries and a deep sense of self-respect often practice the most meaningful kind of kindness, the kind that comes from a place of inner strength, not insecurity. It's important to realize that your time, energy, and emotional capacity are limited. You don't owe everyone your kindness, and you certainly don't have to tolerate disrespect in the name of being nice. In reality, kindness that costs you your self-respect isn't kindness, it's self-neglect. And when you're constantly depleting yourself to accommodate others, you're not showing up as your best self in the long run. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to be honest, even if the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes it's kind to walk away from toxic people instead of enabling them. And sometimes it's kind to yourself to rest, recharge, and protect your peace, rather than trying to be everything to everyone. You deserve to be kind to yourself too. That means checking in with your feelings, honoring your values, and recognizing when a line has been crossed. It means not being afraid to disappoint people who expect you to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. Remember, kindness that stems from fear or guilt is not genuine. The most authentic kindness comes from a place of confidence and clarity. When you give because you want to, not because you feel you have to. In the end, kindness should be a gift, not an obligation. It should lift others up without dragging you down. And the moment it starts to cost you your self-respect, it's no longer kindness, it's a cry for balance. You can love others and still protect yourself. You can care deeply and still walk away, and most importantly, you can be kind and still say enough. Kindness is a powerful and admirable quality. It reflects generosity, empathy, and a desire to uplift others. However, it's important to recognize that not everyone deserves your kindness. This may sound harsh at first, especially if you've grown up believing that being kind to everyone, no matter what, is always the right thing to do. But the truth is, kindness should be given thoughtfully, not blindly. When kindness is extended to those who continually disrespect, manipulate, or harm you, it ceases to be a virtue and becomes a weakness that others can exploit. There are people in this world who see kindness not as something to be respected, but as something to be used. They may take advantage of your good nature, push your boundaries, and drain your energy, all while giving very little, if anything, in return. When you continue to show kindness to someone who repeatedly mistreats you, you're not helping them become better. Instead, you're enabling their behavior. You're sending a message that you will accept poor treatment, and over time that can seriously damage your sense of self-worth. It's essential to understand that kindness must be balanced with discernment. You can still be a kind person and protect yourself. In fact, being kind doesn't mean allowing others to walk all over you. It doesn't mean tolerating rudeness, disrespect, or emotional manipulation. True kindness includes knowing when to walk away, when to say no, and when to stop giving to someone who only takes. It requires self-awareness and strength to acknowledge when someone is not worthy of your time, energy, or compassion. Sometimes people assume that if you're kind, you'll always forgive, always give second chances, and always be available. But kindness is not a contract to be endlessly patient with people who don't appreciate or value you. If someone continuously causes harm, lies, takes advantage of your trust, or fails to reciprocate even basic respect, it's perfectly okay to withdraw your kindness. Doing so isn't cruel, it's a form of self-preservation. In any relationship, whether personal, professional, or casual, mutual respect is essential. If that respect is missing, continuing to show kindness can actually backfire. You may begin to feel resentment, exhaustion, or frustration because your generosity is not being returned. Over time, this can affect your emotional well-being and even cause you to question your own judgment. The reality is that you don't have to keep proving your goodness to people who don't see your value. Choosing who to be kind to doesn't make you cold or selfish, it makes you wise. It means you understand that your energy is finite and that you must protect it. It means you hold yourself to a higher standard by not letting others take advantage of your good heart. And perhaps most importantly, it means you recognize that kindness, to be meaningful, must be given with intention, not obligation. There is nothing wrong with being a kind person. In fact, the world needs more kindness. But that kindness must start with yourself. Treat yourself with the same compassion and care that you give to others. Surround yourself with people who appreciate your kindness and reflect it back to you. And don't be afraid to draw the line with those who repeatedly cross it. Not everyone deserves your kindness, and that's okay. It doesn't make you unkind, it makes you human. You are not obligated to give the best parts of yourself to those who only bring out the worst in you. Save your kindness for the people who truly value it. Give it freely, but give it wisely. Setting boundaries is one of the most important and empowering things a person can do for their mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. It's a way of clearly defining what is acceptable and what isn't in your relationships, your time, and your space. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear being seen as rude, selfish, or uncaring. But the truth is, setting boundaries is not only healthy, it's essential. It's an act of self-respect and clarity, and it helps protect your energy from being misused or drained by others. Without boundaries, it's easy to get caught in a cycle of overextending yourself, saying yes when you really want to say no, and tolerating behavior that leaves you feeling uncomfortable or taken advantage of. Over time, this can lead to burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. You start to feel like your life is no longer your own because you're constantly responding to everyone else's needs and expectations. This kind of imbalance is unsustainable, and it robs you of peace and control over your own life. Healthy boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. They don't shut people out. They guide people on how to treat you. They let the good in and keep the bad out. When you set boundaries, you're not rejecting people, you're simply communicating your limits with honesty and confidence. It's not about being aggressive or confrontational, but rather being clear and assertive about what works for you and what doesn't. It's also important to understand that people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. They won't guilt-trip you for needing space or try to manipulate you into saying yes when you've clearly said no. In fact, your boundaries will help deepen relationships because they create a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. When you respect yourself enough to set limits, you teach others how to respect you too. Some people might push back against your boundaries, especially if they benefited from you having none. That's normal. Change can be uncomfortable for both you and them. But holding firm in your boundaries is a way of reinforcing your self-worth. You're showing that you value your time, your energy, and your peace of mind, and that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of. There is also a deep freedom that comes with setting boundaries. You stop feeling obligated to please everyone, and you start making choices that align with your values and well-being. But you begin to say no without guilt and yes without resentment. You take back control of your time and how you invest it. That kind of freedom allows you to show up as your best self, not out of obligation or exhaustion, but from a place of strength and balance. Boundaries can be simple things like not answering work calls after hours, asking for alone time when you need to recharge, or being upfront when someone's words or actions hurt you. They don't have to be dramatic or harsh, just clear and consistent. The more you practice setting boundaries, the more natural it becomes. And the more you see how much better your relationships and your personal peace become, the more you'll understand just how powerful this practice really is. Setting boundaries isn't about keeping people out, it's about keeping yourself whole. It's a form of self-care that says, I matter too. And when you begin to live that truth, everything in your life begins to shift for the better. People-pleasing may seem like a harmless or even admirable trait on the surface. It's rooted in the desire to make others happy, to avoid conflict, and to be seen as kind, helpful, or easygoing. But when taken too far, people-pleasing can become deeply harmful not just to the person doing it, but to their relationships and sense of identity. It often leads to self-neglect, emotional exhaustion, and a persistent feeling of being unfulfilled or unseen. At its core, people-pleasing is often driven by fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, or fear of not being good enough. Many people-pleasers grew up being praised for being the good one, the peacekeeper, or the one who never causes trouble. Over time, this creates a pattern where they begin to believe their worth is tied to how much they do for others or how agreeable they are. So they keep saying yes, even when they're tired. They stay silent, even when something hurts. They sacrifice their own needs in hopes of earning love, approval, or acceptance. But this way of living takes a serious toll. When you're constantly focused on making others happy, you often end up ignoring your own emotions, desires, and values. You become so used to molding yourself to fit the needs of those around you that you lose sight of who you really are. Your voice becomes quiet, your boundaries blur, and slowly your self-esteem begins to erode because deep down you know that the version of you others love isn't fully authentic. It's curated to meet their expectations, not your truth. People-pleasing can also damage relationships, even though it's often done to try to protect them. When you always say yes to avoid conflict, you're not being honest. You're hiding your real thoughts, needs, and feelings. That might keep things peaceful on the surface, but underneath, resentment can start to build. You might begin to feel taken for granted or unappreciated. You may even find yourself blaming others for your unhappiness, even though you've never clearly expressed your limits or asked for what you really want. Another consequence of people-pleasing is burnout. Continuously giving without receiving, overcommitting your time and energy, and feeling like you're responsible for everyone's happiness leads to emotional and physical exhaustion. You may end up overwhelmed, anxious, or even depressed, and yet still feel guilty for wanting to pull back or take care of yourself. That's because people-pleasers often struggle to put themselves first even when it's necessary. Breaking free from people-pleasing doesn't mean you become selfish or stop caring about others. It means you start caring about yourself as well. It means recognizing that your needs, opinions, and feelings matter just as much as anyone else's. It's about learning to say no without guilt, to express your truth without apology, and to choose relationships where mutual respect and understanding exist. One of the most powerful realizations is that saying no to others is sometimes the most honest, kind, and respectful thing you can do. It allows others to truly know you, not just a version of you that exists to please them. It invites deeper connection based on truth, not performance. And most importantly, it allows you to reclaim your time, your energy, and your sense of self. People-pleasing might keep the peace in the short term, but it often creates internal chaos. Living authentically with clear boundaries and honest communication may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to putting everyone else first, but over time, it leads to a life of deeper fulfillment and genuine connection. You don't have to earn love by sacrificing yourself. You are enough just as you are. Self-respect is the foundation of how we treat ourselves and, in turn, how others learn to treat us. It is the quiet but powerful understanding that you are worthy of dignity, love, and fairness, not because of what you do for others, but simply because of who you are. When you carry yourself with self-respect, it shows in your choices, your boundaries, and your presence. And perhaps most importantly, it sets the tone for how others respond to you. People may not always treat you the way you want, but when you have self-respect, you no longer tolerate what you don't deserve. In doing so, you attract genuine respect from those around you. There's a big difference between demanding respect through force or fear and naturally receiving it because of the way you respect yourself. When you value your time, your energy, and your boundaries, people sense it. They know you won't be easily manipulated, taken for granted, or treated poorly. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you constantly undermine your own needs, allow others to cross your boundaries, or stay silent when you're being disrespected, it sends the message that you don't believe you deserve better, and others will often follow that lead. Self-respect doesn't mean arrogance or thinking you're better than others. It's not about ego or pride. It's about knowing your worth and standing in that truth even when it's uncomfortable. It's about making choices that align with your values and not betraying yourself just to fit in, be liked, or keep the peace. When people see that you hold yourself to a high standard, they're more likely to meet you at that level. And those who can't or won't usually fade away, which, while difficult, is a form of protection. People who truly respect you will not ask you to compromise your self-worth for their comfort. They won't expect you to constantly give without receiving or stay silent just to avoid conflict. Instead, they'll appreciate your honesty, your strength, and your consistency. They'll recognize that your respect for yourself is part of what makes you trustworthy and dependable, someone who can be counted on not just to care for others, but to care for themselves too. In relationships, whether personal or professional, self-respect fosters healthy dynamics. It helps you communicate your needs clearly, stand up for yourself when necessary, and walk away from situations that diminish your value. It also helps you avoid codependency, where your sense of worth is tied to how much you do for others. Instead, you find balance, giving and receiving with mutual care, not from a place of desperation or fear. It's easy to think that being overly accommodating or endlessly self-sacrificing will win people over or make them like you more. But in reality, that often leads to being overlooked, undervalued, or even disrespected. People may come to expect that you'll always bend, always adjust, always give more than you get. And when you finally push back, they may act surprised or even upset. But that's not a sign you're doing something wrong, it's a sign you're beginning to respect yourself, possibly for the first time in a long time. Choosing self-respect is not always easy. It may require uncomfortable conversations, the loss of certain relationships, or standing alone at times. But the peace that comes with living in alignment with your values is worth it. Or the more you respect yourself, the less tolerance you'll have for anything or anyone that doesn't match that energy. And slowly but surely, you begin to build a life and attract people that reflect the love and respect you've chosen to give yourself. Kindness is one of the most beautiful human qualities. It has the power to heal, to connect, and to inspire. But for kindness to be meaningful, it must come from a place of authenticity, not from pressure, guilt, or fear. When kindness becomes something we feel obligated to give, it starts to lose its sincerity. It turns into a performance rather than a genuine expression of compassion. That's why it's so important to understand that kindness should be a choice, not a duty forced upon us by expectations, social conditioning, or a desire to avoid discomfort. Many people are taught from a young age to be kind no matter what, to always smile, always help, always put others first. While these lessons often come from a good place, they can also create an unhealthy pattern. Over time, kindness can start to feel like a requirement rather than a heartfelt decision. You might find yourself saying yes when you want to say no, offering help when you're already overwhelmed, or staying quiet in situations where you should speak up. This kind of kindness is not empowering, it's draining. When kindness is given out of obligation, it often comes at the expense of your own well-being. You suppress your own needs and feelings to maintain an image of being a good or nice person. But being nice and being kind are not the same. Niceness often comes from a place of wanting to be accepted or avoid conflict, while kindness, when chosen freely, comes from a place of strength and self-awareness. It's about giving because you want to, not because you feel you have to. The truth is, you don't owe everyone your kindness. Not every situation or person deserves your emotional labor, your time, or your energy. When you can be a kind person and still say no, you can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be kind and still walk away from relationships or environments that are harmful. In fact, choosing to withhold kindness in certain situations can be an act of self-respect. It's not about being cruel or cold, it's about being intentional. Kindness loses its power when it's given indiscriminately, especially to those who misuse it. Being kind by choice means you are aware of your own limits and values. It means you take a moment to check in with yourself before giving, asking, do I want to do this? Or is this coming from a genuine place? When the answer is yes, your kindness is warm, authentic, and impactful. But when it's no, and you do it anyway just to avoid guilt or discomfort, the kindness can start to feel hollow. And over time, resentment can build. Choosing kindness also makes it more sustainable. Now, you're not burning yourself out trying to be everything for everyone. You're not saying yes out of fear or self-doubt. Instead, you're choosing to be kind in a way that feels good for both you and the other person. That kind of kindness is powerful. It's rooted in truth and self-awareness. It's the kind of kindness that can genuinely change lives, including your own. Kindness is most meaningful when it comes from freedom, not obligation. You are allowed to protect your peace, to say no, and to prioritize your own well-being. You are not less of a good person for choosing when and how to give your kindness. In fact, that choice makes your kindness more real. When it's no longer something you feel forced to give, it becomes something that truly matters. And in that space where kindness is a gift, not a requirement, it becomes something deeply human, deeply powerful, and deeply respected.